Rules of Engagement by Crane. Somewhere between Rarity's frazzled mane, dripping sweat, and quaking legs, Applejack reconsidered this entire meeting. In fact, Applejack had her doubts long before, when she had first confronted the problem. Rarity's problem. As simple and plain as the farm life, Rarity couldn't fight. Period. Once before, Applejack may have considered the unicorn's prowess given her feistiness during Twilight's first slumber party. The boldness, the uncracking determination to be on top, to win every argument, no matter how absurd. And the pillow fight! Indeed, it seemed Rarity could hold her own in a physical conflict. Then came the Diamond Dogs. Applejack was the first to visit Rarity the day after that fiasco. The problem had to be addressed. Rarity had to understand that fancy words, no matter how whiny or mind-grating, didn't always work. Applejack was no liar, and Rarity seemed to forget that, actually tearing up a bit at the farmer's harsh but true words. Rarity couldn't deny. Any pony who knew Rarity couldn't deny. Rarity couldn't fight. So, with averted eyes and a sticky, dry gulp, she agreed to Applejack's terms. Rarity would subject herself to the art of battle. She would forswear her sense of decency with a puffed chest and a proud chin. She would learn to fight. Threats of muddy tracks on every square inch of Carousel Boutique helped, of course. And now, 3 days later, in the lush, hilly, crisp, heavily unpopulated fields of Sweet Apple Acres, stood Applejack and the quibbling wreck she could loosely recognize as Rarity. Applejack was no liar, not even to herself. She felt terrible about this, but it was all out of love. Yes, that's it. Good old, tough beat-your-face-in love.
Don't be so nervous, Sugar Cube,
Applejack said with her best consoling smile. Rarity jolted to attention, apparently not knowing how long she'd been staring at the grass.
Nervous? Who's nervous? I'm certainly not nervous. Ah!
The moment Applejack kicked a hoof-sized rock before her, Rarity squealed and coiled back like a well-oiled spring. Applejack smiled sadly, almost losing her own nerve, almost giving Rarity another day to ready herself. But 3 extra days was more than enough. This had to be done. Soon, lest momentum be lost to Rarity's pleading wet eyes. Applejack walked to her friend with a smooth, brisk pace. Rarity forced her posture straight again, and shook even harder.
It's not as bad as it seems, Rares,
Applejack said, her eyes as gentle as she hoped they were. Obviously, that didn't work. Rarity was still shaking. Worse than before, in fact.
I don't know what to do,
Rarity whined. Applejack winced tightly, completely reluctant to look at those eyes any longer. But she did so anyway, her own eyes now aglow with pride, determination.
There's enough there now,
she commanded. On cue, Rarity snapped to attention, her flesh now rigid and still. That was a start. Still, Applejack wasn't blind to the challenges. She could not teach Rarity as she taught her sister Applebloom. A different approach was needed.
Fighting ain't all that scary, really,
Applejack began.
Fact, once you get past the pain, blood, fractured bones, and minor brain damage, it's kind of fun.
Applejack frowned, noticing too late Rarity grimace more and more after every word.
Oh.
Maybe she should have knocked her lights out and got it over with.
What I mean is...
Applejack cleared her throat.
The first time is always scary, and painful, of course, but once you get a feel for it, it's easy as breathing.
Applejack's heart swelled with relief as Rarity's eyes brightened.
You mean like sex?
Applejack never knew the feeling of a wrecking ball crashing into her face. But Rarity's comparison was just that, a wrecking ball to the face. She shook her head violently, if only to fade the blush that she knew was there.
Of all the... I don't even... What the f... Yes, it's exactly like that,
Applejack said as matter-of-factly as she could. Somehow, some way, Rarity's ear-to-ear smile made Applejack die a little inside.
That sounds wonderful!
Rarity cheered.
If fighting is anything like carnal affairs, then I could really get behind it.
Finally, Applejack simply couldn't look at Rarity any longer.
Yeah, right.
A long silence unnerved Applejack. She dared to peek at Rarity, and immediately she wished she was somewhere else.
Applejack, surely you aren't telling me that you haven't...
Never, in all her natural-born days, had Applejack cursed her inability to lie. She needn't say a word, though. Her averted gaze was blunt as any truth.
Good heavens, darling! With how you've spoken of brutal poundings, taking and giving again and again until you've collapsed from exhaustion, I figured you...
Well, I haven't!
Applejack shouted, every bit as harsh as she intended.
Now, if you don't mind, we got lessons to get back to.
Preposterous, I say! No friend of mine will be ignorant to the rules of engagement!
Rarity declared with a skyward hoof. Applejack stared at Rarity like she'd asked what colour the sky was. Applejack double-took Rarity's words and meaning, and felt herself glaring fiercely at the unicorn. Rarity either didn't notice or didn't care.
Rules of engagement?
Applejack echoed in angry disbelief.
I'll have y'all know that I've seen plenty of stallions in my time.
Suddenly, Rarity's face was unbearably close to the farmer's.
And yet, Applejack, and yet,
she hissed.
Why, I've half a mind to say that the first rule escapes you.
Right then, right there, any shame for this meeting evaporated from the heat blasting off of Applejack. With a flat glare and a squared chin, she smashed her hoof into Rarity's face. Like a springy limp noodle, Rarity's neck straightened again, her face blank, her eyes hollow. It was quick. So quick, neither pony was certain which way Rarity's head turned, or how far. Seconds passed, and without a word or a shred of consciousness, Rarity collapsed.
First rule of engagement,
Applejack began with a turn on her hoof.
Talking is half the battle.
With the slightest shadow of a smile, Applejack sauntered away from her unconscious friend.
See you tomorrow, Rarity. Same time, same place.
Best Garden by Shellah Inontanos. It should be you! Applejack slowed her applause to cast a sidelong glance at her companion. Beg your pardon, Rarity? The white unicorn wore a paper-thin smile and pounded her hooves half-heartedly to match the crowd of ponies around them. That should be you up there, accepting that trophy. I don't understand what the judges were thinking. Up on the stage ahead, Mare presented a trophy with a big golden turnip on top to this year's winner of the Ponyville's Best Garden Award. In a town that was mostly farmers, the title of the best garden tended to be a hotly contested prize. Applejack chuckled and shook her head. "Aw, we did well enough." She waved the second-place ribbon in the air. "Second place ain't bad at all with stiff competition like this. Golden Harvest worked her flank off. She deserved to win." An impatient huff erupted from Rarity. "Please, dear, don't give me that humble pony routine. You worked your flank off, darling. Miss Harvest clearly has hers fully intact. Adding to it by the day, by the looks of it." Applejack sighed. "No reason to be catty, darling." "I am not being catty," Rarity snapped. "I am simply pointing out an observable fact." Applejack glanced up at the stage. Maybe Golden Harvest was starting to put on a bit of pudge. Applejack quickly realized that she was standing next to her mare friend while staring at her neighbor's flank and coughed into her hoof.
Flanks notwithstanding, she put on a good show. She's got a mighty fine garden.
With all due respect to her, Rarity said, her garden was a patch of dirt with weeds sticking out. I am loath to even call it a garden. Your garden was art. Beauty itself, distilled into rows of cabbage and beets. I find it an utter disgrace that any pony could be so blind as to rate that mud-hole of hers over the study and elegance that you presented. She pawed at the ground, her nostrils flared. Applejack pinched her brows. There would be no winning this argument.
Well, I guess there's always next year. Besides, it ain't like Golden Harvest ever beat me for the best orchard. Hey, where are you going?
Rarity was working her way through the crowds of ponies. I simply cannot remain silent about this, she cried, making for the stage.
Oh, Celestia, Applejack muttered. Rarity, wait!
She tried to push her way through the crowds, but there was no way to reach the stage before Rarity did. The fashionista climbed up on top of the platform, stepping in front of Golden Harvest. Darling, I'm very happy for you, and I will let you finish, she said, cutting off the Carrot Farm's acceptance speech. But Applejack's garden is the #1 garden of all time. An orange hoof snagged her and began dragging her off the stage.
Lights come on down, Rarity,
Applejack said as she pulled. Of all time, Rarity repeated as she was taken off the stage. Applejack did not set her down until they were well clear of the crowd.
What the hay was that all about, Rarity? She panted.
Rarity sat on the cobbles, staring at the ground. She mumbled something, too quiet for Applejack to hear. Applejack knelt in closer.
Speak up, hon.
Our garden, Rarity said, tears beading in her eyes. I helped you grow this one. I put up with mud and bugs and weeds to help you with it. She sniffled. It is the very best garden of all time, Applejack. It's our garden. Applejack wrapped a hoof around her.
It surely is, sweetheart. It surely is.
I read that in a book once, by Couch Crusader. Applejack's stomach rumbled like a crocodile tumbling down a very long cliff. Upon the red and white checkered cloth stood plates of tiny, precise sandwiches, miniature pastries, and teacups sized to satisfy the thirst of all but the largest of breezies. Something the matter, dear? Lounging on the other side of the cloth, Rarity took her first sip of chamomile before refilling her cup. Applejack fussed a stray piece of hay from her mane. It all looked the same in there, of course, long as you weren't a proper and pretty unicorn always looking like you were standing downwind of something.
I appreciate you setting up this picnic for the two of us, out here on this hill, overlooking all of Ponyville, in the late morning.
Oh, it wasn't anything. I know how hungry you get after your, Rarity glanced off to one side. Chores. So I made sure to make extras just for you.
Yeah, you know me so well,
said Applejack, her face perfectly flat.
Girls, there you are. Oh, thank goodness I found you two.
The children of Ponyville turned as one to see a purple alicorn racing up the hill to join them. A snarling tome pinned against her flank with her wing. She stopped before a platter of individually arranged alfalfa strands shattered beneath her hooves.
Twilight?
Applejack was the first to get to her hooves.
What's going on? Why does that book look like it wants to eat us? And why'd you bring it here?
When Twilight's head bounced back up, her smile was lopsided and shaking. Her pupils alternated sizes, as if neither side of her head could agree on which was more concussed. I need you two to kiss. Like, right now. And make it messy. Rarity's ears folded back. Excuse me? Twilight's hoof shot toward Rarity, stopping just short of assaulting her muzzle. You heard me, Philly. Pin that Mary on the ground right now and eat her face.
And why would the two of us ever do that?
Applejack could feel it coming on. Her eyebrow strained for release into the clouds above. Because I cast a spell that'll end the world if you don't. So long, little eyebrow. Twilight floated her book toward the two mares. Applejack ignored the whispering in her head. She was too busy not making heads or tails of the text as words phased in and out of the mortal plane.
You're not kidding!
Rarity breathed, drawing an alarmed look from Applejack.
You can't possibly believe... Twilight!
Applejack rounded on Equestria's so-called princess of friendship. Consign it, she even had that weird crown of hers on, if at an angle.
What in the name of this good earth made you do this?
Magic's my special talent!
Twilight shout-whispered. Applejack was going to have to figure out that one later.
What do you want me to do, AJ? Walk past a book like this without casting something out of it? It's a reputation thing, like you and your hatred of lemons.
That Orchard Sultan was a one-time deal, and I don't appreciate you assassinating my complex character like that.
Look, all I'm hearing is a lot of not slobbering over that hot piece of flank over there.
Twilight's eyes rolled up in her head as she bit her lip, then swayed softly on her legs. Rarity tapped Applejack on the shoulder.
Should we?
While we still can,
Applejack stammered, bolting down the hill together. The masseuse's hoof pressed into Applejack's shoulder. First came a whirl of pain, then clarity when the muscle beneath was coaxed into unwinding. The scent of lavender pervaded the dim, warm atmosphere around her. On the next table over, Rarity moaned in vibrato beneath a tattoo of taps up and down her back.
Hi. Rare,
Applejack hissed as another knot came loose above her withers.
We get a better deal here signing up as a couple. That's all.
Appreciate you putting my fears to rest like that, but that's not what I was asking after.
Twilight, then?
Rarity turned, presenting her belly to the ceiling.
She did seem to be having a bad mating day earlier. Oh dear, I should have said something.
For the love of Pete, will you just...
Applejack's words might have had more force behind them if her neck didn't feel like a pillow between a cat's kneading paws.
You really think she's gonna bring about the end of the world if the two of us don't kiss?
Rarity volunteered a foreleg for her masseuse to work on.
Her argument was fairly compelling.
You don't think her argument also scrambled a few eggs in that head of hers, do you?
I wouldn't pin it on that. She hasn't been the same since we lost the old library.
The elastic came off Applejack's mane, and she felt oiled hooves begin to glide down the strands to straighten them.
The library? What does losing most everything she had there have to do with us?
About 20% of her inventory. Oh, that feels good. Lower, please.
Applejack made a face. Then she made a different face as the dots connected in her head.
All those books on the shelves? After all this time?
Written by her, about us. There's was a fair bit of it in between some of our other friends, too.
I am the reason I never saw any of this before?
Rarity turned her head toward Applejack.
I don't know. When was the last time you read a book?
3 days ago. The old castle. When we were helping Twilight figure out how to defeat Lord T-Rack. I read 58 of them.
That doesn't count. Anyway, I suspect the dear is feeling the ache of years of work burnt away in an instant and is eager to get her collection re-established.
The door to the room, formerly private, burst open. Silhouetted in the doorframe stood Twilight in various stages of dishevelment.
There you girls are!
She exclaimed, tapping her hooves together at supersonic speed.
Oh my gosh, you can't even write these kinds of scenes! Can the masseuses get in on it too?
Every knot, spasm and cramp Applejack had been working from her muscles returned in one concert of red pain.
We are not kissing, princess,
she said, pushing herself off the table. Twilight fidgeted.
Why not? It'd be, so hot.
'Cause we ain't into each other the way you want us to be. Right, Rarity?
You could be gentler with the poor thing,
was all Rarity would offer.
So when the world ends and all of us are dead, you're cool with being the one to blame? I mean, this isn't really a hard choice. I can even put on some mood music for you.
Twilight motioned for another mare. A white unicorn with purple glasses and a wild, blue-striped mane peeked beyond the threshold and nodded excitedly. Applejack rolled her eyes.
How do you even know the spell worked?
Well, for one thing, you should look at your masseuses. Applejack wasn't about to fall asleep for a while, not after seeing that. Faces didn't belong down there on a pony, and what showed up on that poor thing's head instead? Well, the window glowed red through the curtains. Screams punctuated the silence when pieces of sky weren't busy falling onto the town. Earlier, she saw Canterlot melt from the side of its mountain like frosting applied to a cupcake fresh from the oven. There were monsters in Equestria, and then there were inept bakers. For now, though, Applejack just wanted to wake up the next day.
Thanks for inviting me to spend the night after Sweet Apple Acres had been walked off with my whole family,
she told Rarity, probing for the cooler spots beneath the covers with her hooves.
Think nothing of it.
The two mares lay in one bed, facing away from each other.
I hope Twilight's staying safe out there.
To her surprise, Applejack hoped for the same.
Why ain't we out there? We got the power to save Equestria from all this with crazy hair.
It's not the hair that makes the hero,
said Rarity, turning over to press on Applejack's breastbone.
It's what's in here.
Sometimes I go to wonder if you're even real.
Rarity gasped, scandalized.
I'm scandalized. What could be more real than the two of us, right here, right now?
Know it, Twilight's creepy, romantic Fanfiction anymore.
Rarity burst out laughing.
I'm so glad you never had to read it. She's intelligent, no questions about that, but she's not much for linguistic artistry. It's not that she's doing anything wrong, per se. She just isn't doing much that's right, either.
She ever tell you why?
Applejack tried not to bring one of Rarity's mane curls closer to her face. She tried not to sniff it.
You've seen her yourself. She's lonely. Every pony is, on some level. Even royalty.
Applejack fell silent at this.
You don't think she has fun with writing that junk, do you?
Rarity made a thinking noise.
Remember that time she got the whole town fighting over that rag pony of hers? She was late writing a friendship letter to the princess. If I had to say, she never has more fun than when she's writing about the ponies closest to her heart.
Applejack felt something deflate in her chest. It felt like her heart.
When you put it that way, I can almost understand that fella.
Then she goes off and pairs them with strangers she's met for 5 seconds, because that's how she sees this world.
Rarity rolled onto her back, weaving her hooves beneath her head.
So, yes, I agree with you that it's creepy, and it's not always that well written, but it's honest. And I think I have a pony here who wouldn't begrudge another for that. Thanks for backing me up, Rarity.
Twilight Sparkle peeked out from behind Applejack's nightstand.
So, you two going at it soon? I brought a camera this time.
Applejack wheeled on Twilight. She wasn't even going to bother asking why she'd spent all that time hiding in Rarity's bedroom while the kingdom fell to pieces outside.
Does it really mean that much to you?
Cowbell noises came from Twilight's head as she nodded. Applejack looked over at Rarity, who shrugged.
Fine,
said the Earth Mare, casting one look back at the alicorn.
We'll just get this over with. We'll be back to being friends, and we'll never talk about this again. Come here, Rare.
Rarity leaned in. Applejack pursed her lips, unsure of whether to close her eyes or keep them locked onto the two gorgeous pools of sapphire before her. Then they kissed. There was a flash.
Good Celestia!
Yelled Applejack, jerking back. There had also been tongue. She wiped the back of her hoof across her mouth as Twilight collapsed on the floor, twitching.
Yes, 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 oh, Mary, yes.
Rarity blushed.
Hey, look outside!
The red glow faded. Twilight drew back the curtains to a kingdom slowly restoring itself to order. Fires shrank and dissipated. Eldritch beings relapsed into ponies with strange sucking sounds. Applejack could hardly believe it. She could believe it more when a pink hoof reached up to the window and rapped on it. The rest of the mare followed it inside as Twilight opened the window.
Did they do it?
Pinkie Pie asked her.
They sure did,
said Twilight, grinning.
You owe me 5 bits.
Pinkie was nothing but sunshine and sparkles as she reached into her pockets for coins.
Wow, Twilight, I didn't think you'd ever give them a kiss.
Gotta do what you have to, cutie. If it means threatening ponies with the end of the world, then that's what it takes. Twilight ruffled her hoof through Pinkie's mane, then drew her in. It was like watching Twilight eat a Winnie Out burger, if the food there was meant for kissing instead. In either case, Applejack couldn't bring herself to look away. The two filly friends sprang off into the sky the next moment, laughing and chatting happily. Rarity tapped her on the shoulder.
Well, that was a thing.
What now? Applejack thought. And thought.
We should probably check in on Rainbow and Fluttershy before they do.
Apple Shampoo by Titanium Dragon.
Welcome to the Carousel Boutique, where everything is... Oh, hello, girls. I wasn't expecting you this afternoon. Did I forget something?
Rarity glanced over towards the calendar hanging on her wall.
Not at all, Rarity. Do you have a minute?
Twilight asked, tilting her head as she peered into the shop from the open doorway. Fluttershy, Rainbow Dash, and Pinkie Pie crowded in behind her.
But of course! Come in! Come in!
Rarity's horn glowed as she took her needle and stuck it into her pincushion before stepping out from behind her workbench.
What can I do for you girls? Do you need new outfits for something? Oh, did Princess Celestia finally convince you to throw a ball?
What? No.
Twilight said, shaking her head as a group wandered inside, Rainbow Dash hovering overhead, while Pinkie Pie went over to make faces in one of the mirrors set against the wall.
We came to you to, talk to you about something.
Twilight rubbed her hoof against her foreleg.
Oh? Whatever's the matter?
Well, we've noticed that you've been spending a lot of time at Sweet Apple Acres.
Fluttershy said, staring at the floor.
And that you've been looking extra happy lately. Like, super extra happy.
Pinkie Pie said, beaming as she bounced over to rejoin the rest of her friends in the center of the room.
And you smell like apples.
Rainbow Dash crossed her hooves against her chest.
Like, really smell like apples. Like, I spend all day sleeping in Applejack's trees, and I don't smell that much like apples. Like apples.
Rarity fanned herself with her hoof.
Oh, really?
Yes, really.
Rainbow Dash flew down, her snout a few inches away from Rarity's.
And, wow.
Rainbow Dash backwinged, waving her hoof in front of her snout.
Bit much?
What we're trying to say is, we all know what is going on.
Twilight cut in, stepping in front of Rainbow Dash. Rarity paled.
You do? I thought we were being subtle.
Oh, Rarity, it's all right. We all understand.
Twilight said, smiling gently as she set her hoof on Rarity's shoulder.
I don't.
Rainbow Dash's hooves cut through the air.
How could you keep it a secret? Don't you trust us?
Rarity winced.
Well, darling, you see, it's a sensitive matter. My career...
Oh, Rarity, do you really think that they would hold something like this against you?
Fluttershy lifted her head, smiling.
Well,
I think they'd appreciate it.
Twilight said, smiling. Rarity blinked.
What?
Yeah, who else would buy super expensive designer shampoo?
Pinkie Pie shouted. Rarity stumbled backwards against her vanity, landing on her rump.
Shampoo!
Yeah.
Rainbow Dash landed in front of Rarity, her wings flared.
I mean, you made some kind of new soap and you didn't even tell us? I mean, I can only use Ring Cloud scented body wash for so long before you can't ever get the smell out of your nose. Why do you think I spend all that time sleeping in Applejack's orchard?
What she means to say is, I think we're all a little bit sick of the stuff they sell down at Barnyard Bargains, and we'd like to try something a little bit different.
If, you don't mind, that is.
Fluttershy said, dragging her hoof across the carpet.
I see.
Rarity shook her head, composing herself.
Well, I'm sorry to say I don't have any left. Yes, I used the last of it just this morning.
I can tell.
Rainbow Dash said, sticking out her tongue.
I can smell you all the way from over here.
Oh, really?
Rarity's cheeks flushed.
My, well, it is not supposed to be that strong. Oh, well, guess I'll just have to start over again.
Wait,
Twilight said, raising her hoof.
how can you be out? I saw you go over to Sweet Apple Acres just last night.
You see, well,
Rarity fidgeted, smiling a bit too broadly.
it just wasn't coming out right, so we just started a new batch. As you said, it is much too strong, and you can still smell it all the way over there. Why, we'll just have to throw out this batch and start a new one too.
I'll say,
Pinkie Pie said, springing forward.
you really smell like apples today.
She leaned forward, sniffing.
Yeah, especially your tail.
Rarity coughed, tucking her tail close against her rump.
You see? We'll just have to start all over.
Fluttershy shook her head.
Oh, Rarity, you don't have to do that.
I don't know. I'm pretty sick of rain cloud scent. I tried just about anything.
Pinkie Pie perked up.
Oh, you can borrow mine.
Anything except that.
Rainbow Dash amended quickly.
Seriously, my whole house turned pink after the last time I tried that. I didn't even know bubble bath could mix with clouds.
Well,
Rarity said, turning her head slowly as her friends all smiled at her expectantly.
I suppose. I'll see what I can do.
Yes, no more rain cloud.
Twilight beamed.
Thank you, Rarity.
Are you sure? You do realize this is experimental shampoo, don't you?
Rarity said, grimacing slightly.
Oh, Rarity, it's not like you're putting bleach in it or something.
Twilight waved her hoof.
I'm sure it will be fine. Besides, we'd be happy to be your guinea pigs.
As long as it doesn't make our manes fall out or something.
Rainbow Dash added, narrowing her eyes. Rarity tittered nervously.
Of course not. Applejack, we have a problem!
From down in the cellar.
Applejack called, her voice muffled by tons of dirt and wood. Rarity's horn lit up, casting open the wooden doors before stepping down onto the stairwell, slowly walking down beneath the barn on Sweet Apple Acres.
I thought we finished up down here last night.
Rarity said, making her way down the stone steps.
Nah, I just said so on account of you looking tired and all.
Applejack!
Rarity pouted, but the effect was wasted on the dark stairwell.
I will not have you working yourself to the bone while I'm around. I said I would help.
Well, Rarity, I'm just about done with it now.
The sound of wood scraping on stone made Rarity's ears swivel as she stepped down into the dimly lit room, the scattered light's soft glow glinting off of dozens of barrels set against the back walls of the earthen room.
Where are you?
Right here, Sugar Cube.
Applejack said, trotting out from between a row of barrels set up against the far wall.
Hooey! I never would have been able to do this in 2 days without you.
Rarity smiled in spite of herself as Applejack took off her Stetson and wiped her brow with her hoof.
Well, I'm glad I could help,
Rarity's smile faded.
but we have a problem.
Really?
Applejack set her hat back on her head and walked over.
What is it?
Twilight saw me coming here last night, and she and the girls came to see me today.
Oh,
Applejack stopped in her tracks, tilting her head slightly.
is that a bad thing?
Rarity sat back, casting her hooves over her face.
It was simply the worst possible thing!
Applejack arched her eyebrow.
Is that the I got a spot on my dress kind of worst? Or the Twilight went crazy and brainwashed half of Ponyville kind of worst?
They thought we were making shampoo!
Applejack stared for a moment before collapsing to the floor laughing, clutching at her chest as she rolled on her back. hooves kicking up into the air. Rarity stamped her hoof.
I'm serious.
I know, darling, it's just...
Applejack cackled, shaking her head and waving her hoof at Rarity as she rolled back over, getting her hooves back under her.
That's just the funniest darn thing I ever heard. Shampoo?
She laughed again, her whole body shaking.
They wanted me to make some! For them!
Applejack smirked broadly.
You tell them you ain't planning on sharing? 'Cause I sure ain't.
Be serious. This is a big problem.
I am being serious.
Applejack stepped up next to Rarity, giving her a light shove with her shoulder.
You know they're gonna figure out about what we've been doing sooner or later. Way I figure it, better sooner.
But my career!
Rarity wailed.
Now, Rarity, I know them highfalutin city ponies got their noses stuck in the wrong end of them, but that don't mean any pony really cares.
Applejack cast her hoof over Rarity's shoulders.
Why, I heard that hoity-toity fella got married in Las Pegasus just last week.
To a bear, Applejack!
Really? Huh. Could have fooled me.
Applejack rubbed her chin.
Now, is that a mare or a...
Applejack!
Applejack winced.
Sorry. I was just fooling.
She gave Rarity a squeeze around the shoulders.
Still, I don't think it's gonna work. Our friends got their hearts in the right places, and you know they're good at keeping secrets. But sooner or later, Pinkie Pie's gonna catch wind of our anniversary or something, and then it'll all be over.
I know,
Rarity said, staring down at the floor.
Don't worry. You know they won't think less of us.
Applejack nuzzled up against Rarity's neck.
Besides, worst comes to worst, you can always come here and make cider with us. I know how much you like squeezing apples.
Rarity huffed, tipping her head up primly.
you're simply the worst, you know that?
I reckon I do.
Applejack pressed herself in against Rarity's side, her tail flicking against the unicorns as she began to rub her snout against her mare friend's jaw.
Applejack, you dirty!
Rarity stepped aside, only to be quickly followed by the Earth Pony.
You're going to make me smell like apples all over again!
Applejack chuckled.
Huh, is that what gave you away?
She asked, as she leaned forward to nibble at Rarity's ear, raising up on her hind legs to wrap her front hooves around Rarity's shoulders.
Besides, I thought you liked how I smelled.
I do.
Rarity said, face flushed, her knees bowing slightly as Applejack leaned against her.
But what will I tell the others when they come to see if we made more soap? You could at least take a bath first.
Applejack laughed as she rubbed her chin against the back of Rarity's neck.
Way I reckon, you're gonna smell like apples either way.
Rarity shivered.
And why is that?
Applejack leaned forward, her breath tickling at Rarity's ear.
You know what they say, darling. You are what you eat.